Hello, everyone. I'm Darren White.
I haven't shown that I'm here.
Welcome. I'm the Director of Community Engagement at Shore Rivers, and I have the honor of making introductions this evening because RiverArts and Shore Rivers have decided to collaborate on the October series of salons. And we did that, as some of you already know, because we really believe that our work in conservation and in art has so much in common, and that the work is really about connecting with communities. It's about shared values, and we'll emphasize this again. It is about creating a future we want to inhabit. So that's the work. That's the work we're doing. We're making a future we care to live in. And so we're so excited that what began as a, hey, we should get together and do a salon, of course, immediately turned into, we should do at least a month's worth of programming, because there are just so many really exciting intersections in this work. So today, I've been so excited about this one. We're going to be hearing from Adams and Mariah Wood. Adams Wood is an award-winning documentary filmmaker and cinematographer based in Asheville, and in fact, standing in Asheville at this moment, but joining us via the magic of Zoom. His clients have included Greenpeace and Google Earth, and I was just telling him his website is such a delight to peruse. So if you haven't already done that, it's linked on the Salon page, but really wonderful stuff. And the documentary that looks like has gotten a ton of attention, called On Coal River, is about a West Virginia community's fight for environmental justice. And I really recommend you checking that out. We're going to be talking today, though, about an upcoming project. So Adams, along with the wonderful Mariah Wood, whom I'll describe a little bit more in a moment, are working on a documentary about family farms and rising tides here on the Eastern Shore. So Mariah Wood is our RiverArts executive director. She has over 20 years of experience in arts and education, particularly music education. And gosh, Mariah, when I was thinking about your tenure here, I can't believe you've just arrived, really, back on the Eastern Shore. All of those of you who know Mariah know that she just immediately became integral to this community and elevated RiverArts to the next level that it was just ready to go to. And particularly since this pandemic started, has just been such a connector and communicator and a force for good. I'm so glad that Mariah is a part of this community. Mariah and Adams, thank you for being born in, on, and around the Chester River and being drawn back to this place. And thank you so much for telling this story that we're going to hear about rising tides and activating positive change. And I just wanted to add, I was lucky enough to go be on the Wood family farm this past weekend. We did a little family farm swap with the Tillman family farm and Wood family farm. And I'm so hopeful about this rising generation of stewards of this land and the conversations we'll be able to have and the ways that we'll all be able to work together for the lands and the people that we love on the Eastern Shore. So I'm going to stop talking because I know there's going to be a lot to hear from these two. So welcome, Mariah and Adams.
Thank you so much, Darren. And thank you everybody for coming and welcome. And I think we are just going to jump in because we have a lot to show you and share with you and talk with you about. And we're going to start out. I'm going to share my screen and we'll show you some pictures and kind of tell you the story about what we're doing and why. And then we will do some talking together. So can everybody see what they're supposed to be seeing right now? Okay, so Adams is going to, sorry. Adams is going to get us started and then we'll take it from there. So I hope I'm following what we planned.
Me too. We'll see.
All right.
Yeah, I'm excited. This is very much an in progress, evolving project. So we're excited to talk to you all about it and get your ideas too. And so thanks for letting us do this. So yeah, on the theme of art, environment, and family, this is a project called Family Tides, and which Mariah and I started talking about 3 years ago. And it's sort of based on our family, and which there's a post-COVID family portrait right there of some of us. And so Mariah and I grew up in this house on Indiantown Farm on the Chester River there. And that is one of these, Eastern Shore, Maryland, multi-generation farms that goes back a long, long way. And so there's our grandfather and Mariah and I on the dock there a long time ago. So this farm is on the Chester River, very close. And you can kind of see how close it is to this issue of sea level rise. And for people that know that, that's the view there from the front yard. And to orient yourselves, there's Deep Point is kind of the landmass on the right, and Conquest Beach is there on the left. And I think Mariah's gonna take over for a minute.
Well, I'm going to jump in and just kind of looking at this image of the Custom House in Chestertown. I can tell you a little bit about where the idea came from for this project. I, like many people who grew up on the Eastern Shore, I moved away to other places and had other adventures, and then I came back, and I spent the summer of, I think it was 2015, working in the Custom House. And I noticed, being here for that summer, that the tides looked different than I remembered from when I was growing up. They were higher, they were more extreme, and the shoreline was very different. And the water would come up. I'm not sure how often that summer it actually came over the foot of High Street. I think not as often as it does now, only 5 or 6 years later, but enough so that I mentioned to someone who I was working with in the Custom House, isn't it funny how the tides are so much different, and how they come up so high. And this was a woman who worked in that building every single day and had a window looking out at the Chester River. And she said, isn't that interesting? I never noticed. And so, it made me think of the frog in the boiling water, and you don't notice until you leave and come back that things look different. And so I called Adams up and I said, I really think we should do something about this. And I sort of expected him to say, yeah, great idea, Mariah, and then keep working on his other projects. But we talked about it, and lo and behold, it sort of developed into something that we decided we were really going to pursue. And then I moved back here permanently about 2 years ago, and we started working on it in earnest, and trying to fundraise and really delve into some of the stories and what the film was going to be about. And then I think at this point, Adams, I'll let you take it from here a little while longer, because Adams is the director, so he's the guy with the real vision.
Yeah, so thanks. I left the Eastern Shore kind of after high school, and was out in California a little bit. I did a movie about gentrification and eviction, and then moved to Asheville, North Carolina, and did a movie based in West Virginia about mountaintop removal, coal mining. So those are both like movies kind of centered around communities dealing with impending big threats and how they sort of dealt with them and reacted to them. Then I did a bunch of work for Greenpeace, got to be on the Rainbow Warrior for a little bit. And then I actually was involved with a project called the Climate Listening Project. And we traveled to a bunch of places around the country and interviewed people about different issues. And I was sort of the director of photography there. I wasn't really I wasn't doing the planning. They just told me where we were going, and they said, and then on Thursday we're going to Miami to talk to Philip Stoddard. And I said, wow, that's cool. That's my cousin. So we were talking to him about sea level rise in Miami, and he is the mayor of South Miami and very outspoken about sea level rise. So it seemed like the stars were kind of aligning and we should do this project, and that there was a lot of family sort of connections to this project. So we started, and like a lot of things, a lot of big documentary projects, you have to really kind of just dive in and start before there's any funding for it. And so that's what we did, really in earnest starting last year. And we're pretty ambitious about it. We thought we'd love to make a documentary film about this and also have some art events to sort of create some awareness and ways to engage people around this issue in a creative way and create some things to film too. And we also wanted to release sort of short form media. So we started filming, we talked to Chris Serino about, if you back up one, about the changes to the bulkhead there at the old fish whistle and dealing with the flooding issue there, and Wilmer Park, where I know he's starting to think about changes there. We went to Corsica Landing, and this is our uncle talking to Joe Edwards, a local waterman, and our Uncle James there is kind of in charge of the public landings, and they're experiencing a lot of nuisance flooding, which he is helping to deal with. And we also talked to Lamont Wright about fishermen in Kent Island and dealing with sea level rise issues there and around the community there. And we also just filmed things around town, around the community, and including wonderful shore rivers there at the Tea Party, and the marching band there, and the famous cousin Laura Wood there again at the Shore Rivers Float.
And Darren.
And Darren. Yep. And we filmed some with Hope Clark, who's really involved with the Citizens Climate Lobby, and tried to cover their work a little bit, engaging people with sea level rise. And we did a lot of filming and continue to with Mary and Hal, our cousins, who live in the house, that same house that you saw a picture of where Mariah and I grew up. They've lived there for 20 plus years. We were trying to figure out exactly. We were trying to remember exactly. I don't know if anybody will chime in with the exact number, possibly. They can chime in later. Again, this house is like 30 feet from the Chester River, and Mary and Hal are you know, of course, many of you know them or their work or are related to them, but they are wonderful artists that work a lot with nature. And, you know, if you wanted to talk to people who are kind of like close observers of changes around them and nature around them, you couldn't find anybody more appropriate than Mary and Hal, I think. And so these are some pictures that Mary took of flood tides that have been occurring, you know, kind of recently at that property. And there's one there. And just for context, you can see how close it comes to the house. My whole childhood, I never remember water on the lawn except for one time during a hurricane. And so, you know, it's obvious to me that those changes are pretty.
And just to make it clear, when you look at this photograph, if you haven't been here, all this what looks like a beautiful creek on the right of the photo is not, that's land. That's supposed to be land, and you can see the marsh grasses beyond that, and that is supposed to be the buffer between the water and the land. So, and that's quite a wide patch of that grass. So this water has come, you know, many feet toward the house. And you can see that it's, I think Mary and Hal may be able to chime in with another number to tell us how close it's gotten. I think maybe 17 feet is the closest it's gotten to the house.
That's right, 17 feet.
So that's very close.
Very close.
Yeah. So these changes are happening, you know, in real time while we're filming, and there's Mary and Hal talking to Jim Bass from the Eastern Shore Land Conservancy about options for, you know, projections for what's going to happen, as well as options of what they can do to protect their house. And just off of the sort of publicly available flood factor, it's called now, website, these sort of blue and dark blue areas represent a certain flood risk today, and then the next one is 15 years from now, and you can see that covers up the house where it is now, and then 30 years it's even more. So
if you can't tell, so if you see where this long straight dock is projecting out into the river, that is at the edge of the front yard of that house that we grew up in. And so you can see how the water is projected to be, you know, well beyond that. I mean, surrounding the house.
So, and this is, you know, happening kind of all over. We also, you know, we wanted to focus a lot on our family and, you know, kind of get granular with that story. But we also wanted to recognize that there's other places up and down the bay that experience this in different ways. And we went down to Taylor's Island in Dorchester County and spoke with Rosalind Watts and her family. And if you can see there's a cemetery that's kind of across the road from her house. And then you can see behind her the marsh, and that marsh is just really encroaching and threatening that cemetery right now. And the next slide, I think, just shows how close the water is getting to roads on just I mean, I think this is pretty low tide, and I bet a lot of you have seen this before, but we pulled off the road to try to get a shot of something and had to rely on a good Samaritan to pull us out because, you know, and they were, you know, we were pretty dumb to do that, but I think that's what happens there. So, and then COVID happened, and we were slowed down a little bit on the filming, transitioning to different ways of doing things. But we went back, and Mary and Hal have been dealing with raising their dock because that has been flooded and sort of battered in part by sea level rise. And I think it just over time too, but the building it back, they're making the smart decision to build it up a lot higher than it is now. And so that work.
So this dock, if you could see how long it is on that map, and it is, I believe it's the longest one on the river, and it has been for many generations. Actually, it's been a landmark on the Chester River, and it is, you know, there used to be railroad tracks on it to take little batches of peaches and other goods to the end of the dock, where they would be picked up by the boats that were going to the Western Shore to Baltimore. And that was also a place you could get on the boat and go to the Western Shore instead of before the Bay Bridge was there. So it's a real landmark and a real sort of place of importance and significance to our family, because it's where we, for generations, have interacted with the river. It's our point of access to the river, and the place where we, you know, kind of are able to make that transition. It's the boundary between the land and the water for us, but it's also, you know, a landmark for other people who use the river. And it was getting covered up by water a lot of the time, and as well as, you know, sort of degrading and decomposing in natural and but also possibly accelerated ways. So sorry to jump in, but I wanted to give that context.
No, thanks. That's great. And so yeah, like Mariah said, we think she took this picture of the demolition, and then I went up there and we took some footage of the rebuilding, and you can see across the river someone else is doing the same thing, the crane behind the workmen there. So it's definitely an issue that's happening a lot, as you guys know. And Shore Rivers, there's an Instagram post from Shore Rivers, is helping get the word out. And that's one of the things that we wanted to talk about tonight, is just, you know, our on the one hand, and definitely when we started the project, we felt like one of the benefits of it was just, this is such a tangible and visible manifestation and evidence of sea level rise. I mean, I'm sorry, of climate change. And it, you know, and with the sort of perspective that we have from like Mary and Hal and stuff, and how close they are, that it's worthwhile documenting that. But as we've been filming, I feel like, you know, things like the fires out west and stuff, we're kind of questioning a little bit, how much is that something to put energy behind, just showing people the evidence of climate change, versus like, how are people reacting to this? You know, what do people think of it? You know, what are solutions to it? And I'm kind of both minds of that. I mean, you know, our presidential debates, we've had a question on climate change, and the question is, do you believe in it? So it's still kind of valid, I think, to talk about that, and yet it's probably not enough. So that I think is, oh, and as Mariah just, this Shore Rivers slide, right underneath the water of the Shore Rivers slide, is this marker, you know, celebrating the tricentennial of Chestertown, and all the people who sort of helped found Chestertown and have nurtured the town and culture along the way. And I just like kind of that image and remembering that. And even though the tide is covering that up sometimes, you know, we're on a strong foundation and of people that have had to have vision and figure out how we're going to go on as people and as a community. So that is kind of, I think, the end of the summary of the project. And maybe, Mariah, do you want to turn it over to some questions and such?
Yeah, so should we should we do our little planned activity to get things going, or should we have some questions first or some comments?
I think we could, well, maybe we could do like 5 or 10 minutes of questions if anybody has them, and then we could save the other stuff for the end.
Oh, look at all these people who showed up while we were not looking at the screen. That's exciting. Hi, Gray.
I'll defer to Mariah. You just lead the way.
Okay, well, I think the salons are meant to be conversations and sort of places where we all get to chime in and share thoughts and develop thoughts. So if anybody would like to do that, please do jump in, and because we have a number of people here. If you can stay muted while you're not doing that, then we'll all be able to hear better. And in the meantime, I can give you all a moment to think by telling you about some things that we were thinking we could do. So I think Adam's mentioned that when we were first planning this film project, part of what we were thinking was that we would hold some art events to create something to film, and also to facilitate and create some conversation around climate change and sea level rise, and especially right in the communities where it's happening and visible and having an impact. And so we looked around and kind of tried to find out what was happening and what other sort of climate/art things are being done. And one of the things that we came across was the Climate Ribbon Project, which you can go to their website and read about. But the idea is that it is an art project and an emotional sort of, it's a space of being able to express the emotions that we have about what's happening to the planet and to our communities. And it's also a dialogue. So we are going to try to do a version of that here in Chestertown as part of this Shore RiverArts collaboration. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But one of the things that it does is it asks you to say, what do you love and what do you not want to lose? So if you want to think about those questions a little bit. Adam's had this idea about a little way to get the conversation going here. And I think he might want to describe it because I haven't experienced this.
Okay. Yeah, I did this once in a meeting and I thought it was cool. So it's like a little chat. They called it a chat waterfall. Have you guys done this? Yeah. So I guess my question, you know, I kind of asked that, like, what if there's one thing that a project like this could accomplish or should accomplish, or you would wish it would accomplish, which might be like education or inspiration or action or, you know, whatever. Whatever the answer to that is, you type it in the chat and then we all kind of hit enter at the same time, and it's fun and all these answers pop up at once. So we will, this is the audience participation part right now. And so I'll do it. Let's do it now, if you guys are up for it.
So we're gonna type in our answer and then you're gonna tell us when to hit enter,
yes.
is that right? Okay.
So it could be a word or a phrase, and of course nobody's had any seconds to think about this, so don't worry about it too much. But it'll be fun to have this little record later. So if everyone is ready, we'll give you 5 more seconds. Okay, here we go. 5.
Can you restate the question we're answering or whatever?
I sure can. Yeah, like we described this project a little bit, which is basically just illustrating sea level rise and the effects of that on a community and on a family. And with covering that issue, if there's one thing that project could accomplish, what would you want that to be? Does that make sense? So we'll just go 1, 2, 3, go. 1, 2, 3, go.
Woo!
That was fun. I like it.
Now we have to scroll down and see the answers.
We got a lot. We'll blame some of this late arrivals on connectivity. Just kidding.
All right.
No, that's great. That's really good. And I think we had a couple other questions.
Well, first, let's see what these answers are and maybe talk about them a little bit. So bring it home, connection to place, concrete action for those who live near water, help us gain foresight, wake up, I like that one, inspire action, responsibility, hope in place, hope, 2 hopes, resilience, make people change their ways, and inspiration. So there's some overlaps there, and I'm really happy we did this because some of these are not words that we have talked about that much in our planning.
Hi.
Gail McConaughey. Yes.
Sorry, did you, I think you skipped mine. I made it longer. Do you mind if I, at the very,
Oh, at the beginning, yeah, sorry, I didn't scroll back far enough. Love what you're doing. Make the changes concrete. Imagine if this linked to lots of others documenting their areas changes. That's a great idea. And that's,
Imagine.
yeah, I love it. So,
Mariah,
yes.
I liked seeing you all sitting down with Jim Bass, who I know of, and is, a really good guy that has, that concrete, here's what you should think about. And I'm curious for people who live and have their houses, right here on the water, what are some of the suggestions that planners are talking about? There's raise the house, but for people who have that sense of place, if you don't want to move to, no offense to Indiana, but you don't want to move to Indiana, we want to be here. What are some suggestions that you've already heard from people?
Well, I think Mary and Hal could probably talk about what Jim talked about with them, and maybe some of the Shore Rivers folks can also talk a little bit about that.
Well, we talked with Jim about 2 options. Well, 3 options. 1, do nothing, which isn't a good one. Raise the house or move the house. Since we live on a farm, we do have space to move the house. And we thought about that seriously, but talking with our cousins and just searching our own hearts, we really don't want to have to move the house away from this place because the setting is so important to the experience of the house, and being next to this big long steamboat wharf and so close to the river and seeing it change all the time. It's just integral to the experience of living here. So we are actually planning to raise the house 5 feet, probably this coming spring. And it may come down to the next generation, possibly the one after that, to actually move it when the river is just too high. So that was a great conversation with Jim Bass. And I love that he's so positive and uses the word resiliency so often.
Mhm. Yeah, I don't know, Tim, if you or any of the other Shore Rivers folks have stuff to tell us about what communities are doing or what the conversations are around how communities are going to respond and adapt.
Yeah, I think, I mean, what Mary just lined out was, I mean, those, if you're dealing with sea level rise, those are your kind of 3 main options you have if you're talking about a structure. But when you start, you got to think about a couple other things too in different situations. So one is erosion, right? So sometimes you have sea level rise and flooding that occurs, but other times you may be in high ground, but you have erosion. So that's really important when you're dealing with that. It's adding native plants, a buffer, shrubs, things like that with deeper root systems will slow down that erosion. It's also important to remember that erosion in the Chesapeake region is a natural occurrence. Okay, that's how wetlands are created. There are certain species that live in eroding banks, like tiger beetles and things like that. So erosion is a natural thing and inherently isn't really bad. So with that in mind, it's also important to consider not only just protecting the resources that we have and adapting, but also looking forward and planning, like, let's not build in those places, okay? Let's not build anywhere that close to the river anymore, because we know it's not going to be sustainable. We know that whether it's a public facility or private facility, a private home, someone's going to have to pay for that and make major investments. So, we really need to make sure that we're considering those kinds of things when we're planning any type of future development or things like that. I mean, I think Darren last week was talking about how people didn't used to like to live by the river because they were essentially the sewers, right? That's how we got rid of our trash and sewage and things like that. The other thing that I find interesting is if you look at most historic homes, they're not along the river. They're set way high, way far back, because previous generations understood that these things, rivers, are living, breathing things that change over time. And you don't want to have your home impacted by that change. Of course, the climate chaos and all the things that are happening are accelerating those changes. So we just need to, account for that by doing the things that the McCoys are doing, by, enhancing our buffers, and by not making the same mistakes that we've made for the past 100 years. That's all I got.
Yeah, that's great. And, it's interesting. So that site of where that house is that we grew up in, which is now a house and has been for 3 generations, or maybe 4 now, depending on how you count it. It wasn't a house. It was, there was a peach orchard. It was a place where that was, about the industry really, and not a place where people lived. And then my great grandmother built that house there. So it's interesting hearing you with that wider sort of chronological perspective about how land was used and what different locations were thought of, how they were thought of as what they were suitable for in the past versus in the more recent past versus now.
Yeah, could I chime in at this point?
Please.
I just want to say it's really important to never separate resiliency from sustainability. And
so
I'm a cousin.
Yeah, so just to introduce Gray. Gray Reed is our cousin and also is married to Philip Stoddard, who you heard about earlier.
Oh, you did?
Yes, Adams was talking about going down with the Climate Listening Project.
Oh, yes. No. Yes.
Just trying to make all the connections.
Right. I live in Miami at about 10 feet. So, but I just want to say that I appreciate so much the way that that the family, Mary and Hal and James Wood, and who live on the farm, and have not only been worried about saving themselves and their houses, but have gotten solar panels and are taking the farm organic. And those two moves to say, look, we know where these problems are coming from. Let's do something about that too. And so I think it's interesting. And I also wonder in your film, whether you might ask people what their plans are, and plans, in this sort of broader thing, not only to save yourself, but what are your plans to address the bigger issue? It's interesting to hear people talk about the future as they see it.
Right.
That's great. I like that.
Yeah, I'm gonna put that so that it's memorialized in the chat. So I think we had a couple. Adams, did you want to do a couple other questions with this little waterfall idea? That was kind of fun.
I think, well, yeah, we had, I think, one other question, which was just, how do you experience climate change or sea level rise yourself, like in your life? If we could do that one.
Yeah, let's do that.
So I would say sea level rise, if you have an answer for that. And if you don't, it could just be climate change.
Dad, you're not supposed to hit send yet.
Oh, this is a waterfall.
So, and I've not thought of an answer for this yet, but I will here.
Are you going to count us down, Ed?
I will.
Are you still thinking?
Yeah. 1, 2, 3, go.
Woo! All right. Okay. I'm wetter, flooding in the front yard. I'm scared of storms in a way I never have been before. Yeah, that's true. Living in more fear for future. Compulsion to photograph high water. No snow. Fearing weather. I teach it, and every year I have to approach the topic differently because the situation changes. Snow, being wetter, and my family are water people. Florida Keys, Lake Erie, Greenwood Creek. I paint to remember. So that's a great intersection of art and environment, and the way that, the way I like to talk about art, not just having to do with the environment, but it certainly applies, is that it's a way both to evoke and to express emotions and experiences. And I think that's that's why, part of why we're doing this project, right, Ed? Because we want to express how we feel and document it, and also sort of incite similar feelings in other people.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you want to talk about the Climate Ribbon Project a little bit more and do that one, or do you?
Yeah, so we will have more information in our last Shore RiverArts for the moment session next week about how we're going to do this right now in Chestertown, and maybe at a later time we'll do another version, but we will identify a tree for you in Chestertown, and what you will do is you will take a ribbon or a strip of fabric that's long enough to write something on, and then also tie one end to the branch of the tree. And you will write down what you love or what you want to not lose, and take it to the tree and tie it to the branches of the tree. And it will be a kind of an evolving, living sculpture for a period of time until we responsibly remove the pieces and do the right thing with them. In the Climate Ribbon Project is meant to be a dialogue. And so the way that it was designed is that you would write down what you wanted on your ribbon and tie it to the tree. And then you would take what someone else had done. Because it's COVID times and people might be a little nervous about that, and we're not sure whether people should trick or treat and all that, we're gonna dispense with the taking of other people's ribbons for now. But what we'll ask you to do is go onto the webpage for this salon, and you can just put your answers in the chat so that we can still see what other people are saying. And we'll share more of the details with that, about that with everybody next week. But for now, I think we can answer those questions in this waterfall chat tonight, and then you can let it marinate, and maybe you'll have the same answer, or maybe you'll have different answers when you do your ribbon. So does that make sense to everybody? So how about if we start with, what do you love? So we'll put that in the chat. Okay. 3, 2, 1, go. Woo. All right. And because we're running out of time, I'm not going to read them all because we're running out of time, but you can read them. And we will share them also. And then the next question is, what do you not want to lose? Okay, 3, 2, 1, go. Woo. All right. Oh, good. So just skimming through, I can see a lot of great answers. Well, I see that the youngest member of the Salon has joined us, and last time that was also the indication that we had run out of time. So welcome. And I think we can wrap it up, but thank you all for listening, and please feel free to email us. Adams and I are, this project that we're doing is meant to really be rooted in the communities that we're, I don't know what the right word is, because it feels like what we want to do is be in a dialogue. And so I hope that you'll please feel free to reach out to us with any thoughts that you have. And
there's a website that maybe we should, so we do have a website, familytidesfilm.com, and you can, if you don't want to just email us, you can sign up for the newsletter. And it's
doesn't come out very often, like once a year.
Maybe eventually it'll come out and be exciting and stuff. So you can do that. So thanks a lot.
Well,
Yeah.
Mariah and Adams, thank you for being here and for leading us in this discussion. And thanks to you and Shore Rivers. I feel like I'm so grateful for this partnership, because it's given us this theme to hang our hats on and to come together and talk about the importance of arts and the environment. And I think it's taken us in directions that we haven't gone in other salons. So thank you again to Shore Rivers for getting us started with all of this. And as we end today, I think we will toast to resilience. And, Gray, you mentioned sustainability and resilience together. And I want to say, as we talked about buildings, about nature, and then resilience of spirit. And I think that's something people mentioned hopefulness a lot. We talked about it in all the other weeks with Shore Rivers. And I think that's really important too. So here's to resilience, and we look forward to seeing you next week.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks for coming, Gray. I think you get the long distance prize for today.
Right. Well, it's a tough trip, I'll tell you.
Well, it looks like you're in a train station.
Oh, I'm actually in Vienna. This is Otto Wagner's post office bank in Vienna.
Oh.
Mariah, I just
Yes.
realized we toasted and didn't let it give a chance for Shore Rivers to do our action of the week, which is super
Oh my
important.
gosh.
So we should mention, I think everybody on here is going to do this action anyway, maybe already has, but Darren, you want to give a plug for Shore Rivers action of the week?
I'm gonna let.
I'm so sorry. That's my fault.
No, I forgot too until right now.
Go for it, Tim.
It seemed like you did such a good job wrapping it up, but yeah. So quickly, just to recap, our previous actions of the week were, picking up trash, right, was the first one. The second one was planting native plants, I think. So these simple actions can build up and kind of create a lot of really positive impact. So the next one is also simple, something I'm sure that you will all be doing, and that is to, vote for climate. So I'm part of a nonprofit, and as you know, I cannot recommend to vote for any candidate or do any electioneering, but I can encourage you strongly to execute your democratic right to vote and also to help others do the same. And I can also advocate for policy. So, we have a choice of if we want to vote for science, if we want to vote for truth, if we want to acknowledge the existential crisis that's happening in our future and, choose the folks that actually want to tackle that challenge and create, a better world for us and future generations. So, or do we want to vote for people that are going to bury their head in the sand and ignore it? And we already know what that looks like. We're starting to see that right now. So the time is now for change. Go vote.
Tim,
Please,
thank
but
you.
not climate
I'm
change.
so glad that,
Or climate change, not that kind of change.
right, you're right. Right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all.